بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. From Abadu, my dear brothers and sisters, we have been talking about in our class on lessons from the stories of the Anbiya alayhi salam. We have been talking about the story of Musa alayhi salam. And in the last lesson, I mentioned to you how Musa alayhi salam worked for Shuaib alayhi salam in Madian for 10 years, and his job was herding sheep. He was a shepherd of sheep. Now, interestingly, as I mentioned, shepherding of sheep is something that most of the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, most of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were shepherds of sheep. Musa alayhi salam was a shepherd of sheep. Isa alayhi salam was a shepherd of sheep. Isa alayhi salam used the simile of the shepherd when he spoke of, or he used the term shepherds of men. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself was a shepherd of sheep. As a child, where he was growing up with the Bani Sa'ada, he was there later on as well. There were, many of the Anbiya alayhi salam who were shepherds of sheep. Now, what's so special about being shepherds of sheep? As I mentioned in that class of lessons from the Anbiya, and today I thought let me talk about this from a purely that context in our class here on Akhlaaq of the Ummati, because this is something that we need to learn. One of the things that I recommend to schools is to give children this experience of being shepherds of sheep. And by being shepherds of sheep, I don't mean just like 10 minutes walking behind a flock. I mean going and camping out. Spend as much time as you can, at least overnight. I mean, if not, ideally I would say go spend a week. But we have become weak over time, and unfortunately we lack in patience, we are weak, we are all kinds of things. So anyway, to make a long story short, if we become shepherds of sheep, it's a huge, very valuable lesson in terms of leadership of people. Now, therefore, what is to be learnt? I have tried to condense this into 7 leadership lessons from the shepherding of sheep. The first and foremost of those leadership lessons is responsibility and accountability. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned this specifically about and used the term shepherd. He said, Kullukum ra'in. He said, all of you are shepherds and you will have to answer for those in your care. So every one of us, whichever position we might be in, we are shepherds, and we will be questioned about the sheep which are in our care. So responsibility and accountability is the first and foremost lesson that the shepherd learns, because the shepherd has to report to a higher authority. The shepherd is not the owner of the sheep. The shepherd is working for the owner of the sheep, and so he is responsible for those sheep to the owner of the sheep. So he has to report to a higher authority. The shepherd is responsible, and he cannot blame the sheep for getting lost or getting hurt. Right? He can't say, well, what can I do? My sheep are stupid. No matter whether the sheep are stupid or clever, the shepherd is responsible. Now, if you see how this shepherding is done in most places, I've seen it both in India as well as in Saudi Arabia. Shepherds literally live with their sheep, because especially if the flock is large, they can't. The shepherd doesn't have land. The shepherd does not have land. He doesn't have grass which he owns. So he's grazing the sheep in public lands or in the forest, and grass, over a period of time, the grass is over in that area. So he has to move. So the shepherd moves from one area to another area with his flock of sheep. So he lives there. He can't go home every night. right? He can't take his sheep home every night, obviously. I mean, you can't enter the town with 200 sheep or 2,000 sheep. And also, he can't leave the sheep to their own devices in the night and go off home, to his family. So the shepherd literally is responsible for the sheep, like as if they are his family, as if they are his children. And he literally lives with them. They are, I've seen shepherds, we call them dhangar in Hyderabad area. They they light a little fire in the night for the cold, and many of them they carry a sheepskin blanket, sheep wool blanket, very rough, almost black in color, and of course smells of sheep. They usually tie a turban on their head, and it's just a long cloth and turban, and they have a staff. They have a nice big thick stick. In the night, they cover themselves with this thing, and they're sitting there. And many times they, if you see them in the distance, in the lights of your car or a torchlight or something, you can very easily mistake that shepherd for a bear, because that's what it looks like, with this covered up with. I'm talking about India, covered up with that black blanket. The giveaway, of course, is the flock of sheep around them. I mean, sheep wouldn't be sitting around a bear, but if you just see the shepherd by himself, he looks like a bear in the night. He's sitting there. The staff is, he holds it. Sometimes he will knock down some leaves for the sheep. But sheep are grazers. They're not browsers, so they don't eat too much of leaves. But the shepherd sometimes knocks them down. The staff is also you can't hit the sheep with that. If you hit the sheep with that staff, the sheep is dead. But it's there as a deterrent, so it runs here and there. He knocks on the ground with the staff. The staff also is support for him, so he stands there. He leans on the staff. The turban on the head is not a status symbol for the shepherd. That's another aid for him. What they do is they sit on the ground on their bottom. They draw up their knees, and they take this cloth and they tie it around the body from the lower back around the knees, and they knot it. So now he's tied himself like this. He is secure. He won't topple here and there. So it's like a mobile chair for him. It gives him back support, so he doesn't have a pain in the back, and he sits there with this thing wrapped around his knees and his back. And at the same time, he's not tied himself. If he wants to get up, he'll get up very quickly, because he just has to just stand up. That's it, and then the loop will fall off. So everything has its use. So the shepherd now, the first and foremost lesson therefore is responsibility. These are my sheep. There's nobody else here. Sometimes the shepherd will have a dog, and the dog also helps him to shepherd the sheep. But other than that, there's no one there. He can't call somebody. He's not in a town. If the sheep get into trouble, he has to look after them. Sheep gets hurt, he has to know enough first aid, and he must have something, whatever he needs, the medicines and so on, to apply, a salve on the wound of the sheep if it got hurt. Whatever has to be done with the sheep, the shepherd is responsible for that. Second, very important lesson is patience and mercy and compassion. So this is a very important lesson that the shepherd of sheep learns, because sheep have some qualities that other animals do not have. Sheep are very peculiar. I mean, they have, first and foremost, sheep are weak. Secondly, they take their time, right? The sheep are never in a hurry. They are slow. They run around. They get easily distracted. They're grazing somewhere. They just go off somewhere else. They are weak, and they need much more protection than other animals. That's also how you can have a whole herd of sheep, and one dog is enough to guard them, direct them, and to shepherd them. They are obviously far more susceptible to threats than camels or horses or cattle. For example, if you take a herd of buffaloes, I've grazed buffaloes as well. If you have a herd of buffaloes the buffaloes actually take care of the shepherd. I mean, there have been cases where there has been a leopard or a tiger which tried to attack, but the buffaloes ganged up on it and chased it away, but would not, the shepherd is safe with those buffaloes. I was in Corbett National Park once, and there was an elephant there. There were forest department's elephants. They used to take us on for safaris to see animals. In the evening, I saw the elephant. It was a female big cow, and the elephant rider, the elephant driver, the Mahavat, his son, who must have been maybe about 10 or 12 years old, he climbed up on top of the elephant, and he is lying down, flat on his face, lying down like this on the back of the elephant, and the elephant has gone into the forest because they leave them in the evening to graze, to find their own fodder, and then later on in the night the elephant comes back, or sometimes in the morning comes back. So as the elephant is walking off into the forest, I asked the Mahavat was there, the father of the boy. I said, aren't you afraid of this forest has tigers, leopards, bears, all kinds of things? So I said, are you not concerned about your son? He said, नहीं सर, वो हथनी देख लेगी उसको, हथनी के साथ जा रहा ना, क्या उसको कौन क्या कर सकता है? He says he's going with the cow. Hathi is a male and Hathini is a female. So he said he's gone with the female elephant, but she'll take care of him. There's nothing in the forest that can attack him with that elephant as the caretaker. Right now, he wouldn't say that if the boy was grazing sheep. So the different animals. Rasulullah said the herders of camels are arrogant by nature. They become arrogant because the camel is an arrogant animal. The camel is a big animal. It is a camel is more than capable of killing you if it wants. Sometimes they do. They go crazy. Some of the male camels in rut, they go crazy, and then they bite and they kick, and they can very easily kill a man. But not sheep. Right? People who ride horses, Rasulullah said that they become arrogant. The horse gives you a sort of status. You are high up in the air and so on, and the horse is a very dignified animal. So cattle, as I told you, cattle can look after themselves. They will support each other. They come together. If you see how buffalo behave, for example, when they are facing a pride of lions, whole pride of lions, the whole, God knows in the pride there may be 20, 25 lions, all of them together most of the time cannot get at a calf in the buffalo herd, or cannot get at one buffalo because they all stick together. But not sheep. Sheep will run. Sheep will go everywhere. They have no concept of unity. They do not come together to protect their young or the flock. So this is a very, sheep have these qualities. Also, they cannot be punished too harshly because they cannot withstand severe punishment. Sometimes you see camel herders, if they beat the camel, you must see how violently they beat the camel. They have a stick, and with full force, the man will slam the camel because the camel is so big, and it has a thick skin. It won't register. I mean, you can't just sort of do that to the camel. It makes no difference to the camel. It has to be really hammered to know that something is happening. But do that to a sheep, and the sheep is dead. Right? One whack with a stick, and that's it. That's the end of the sheep. Especially if you hit it somewhere on the head or the neck or something. That's it. So the sheep cannot withstand severe or harsh punishment. So the shepherd must be patient and merciful and compassionate, otherwise his sheep will die. As I mentioned to you, camels are arrogant, and so you must meet, you need to meet the arrogance with strength. And so the shepherds of camels they tend to be tough and rude because that's how they keep their camels in control. This is how the profession also affects the individual. You would have seen many doctors, their handwriting is very bad. Not all. I know some doctors who have beautiful handwriting, but most of the time, my father was a doctor, and you couldn't for the life of you read his handwriting. But his pharmacist could do it because he was used to that handwriting. So because the doctors they tend to scribble because they write those prescriptions and so on. Teachers, for example, become extremely scholarly and pedantic. So for a teacher, anytime the teacher is speaking, maybe about something completely, even inane or like a joke, but the teacher will tell that joke as if he's giving a khutbah or something. It's very lecturing kind of attitude, very preachy style of communication. Mechanics, for example, their language, the way they deal with things, their personality is very different from farmers, for example, who deal with the plants and the earth, right? Similarly, engineers, politicians, lawyers, policemen, they all have different personalities. And this is how the profession affects the personality of the person. And that's why the profession is very important to consider. And sometimes the effect of the profession may not always be very beneficial on the person, and it's very subtle, that effect. So you tend to change without being aware of it, but people around you will see and sense that change. The shepherd, therefore, must be very patient and bear with the sheep. And so therefore people who are shepherds, who have been shepherds, they learn to be patient and to bear with people no matter what they do, right? Musa alayhi salam was a shepherd for 10 years, so he had a lot of training to lead the people of Bani Israel, and so were many other Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The issue of putting up with people being irritating and people being just plain stupid and so on and so forth. This is a reality in our lives, where we have people who do all of these things. But if you want to be a leader, you cannot afford to become impatient. You cannot afford to become. I know it's very difficult. It's not easy for me to say it. Many times I have a lot of difficulty trying to remain patient, but what is right is right. Whether I can do it or I can't do it is not a criterion. So patience and sabr is extremely important if you want to be a leader. Third quality that a shepherd must have is courage, because the shepherd is the only protection for the flock. As I told you, with buffaloes, with cattle, the flock, the herd protects itself and will also protect the shepherd, right? But not sheep. Sheep cannot protect themselves, and obviously they can't protect the shepherd. So the shepherd has to be courageous, has to be very brave. There are many threats to his sheep, all of which the shepherd must be aware of, and he must know what to do about them, right? So sometimes the threats are from poisonous things. A sheep will just eat anything, they will drink anything. So the shepherd has to be aware of what they are eating, where they are eating, the kind of water they are going to, is it pure, not pure, contaminated. Also, obviously, sheep have the threats of wild animals, predators, and so on. Also threats from somebody trying to steal sheep or something. So different kinds of threats. Then a shepherd must be prepared to put himself in danger to save his flock, because sheep cannot defend themselves, let alone defending the shepherd. That doesn't even arise. But therefore the shepherd has to be ready to put himself between the sheep and whatever is threatening the sheep. Since not all threats are the same, the shepherd must also anticipate threats and be prepared for them. So he must be creative to think of solutions for new emerging threats before they become a source of grief for his sheep. A flock of sheep is notoriously difficult to keep in control, because sheep tend to stray. They go here and there. So the shepherd has to be alert all the time, and he must know his sheep intimately so that he knows when one is missing. And this is an amazing thing to see, and I've seen this multiple times, how a shepherd knows literally every sheep in his flock. And if one is missing, he knows it's missing because he knows all of them. They do not even have to count. And again, you try counting a flock of sheep. I mean, that's one way of driving yourself crazy, right? Because they don't stand still. You say 1, 2, 3, and then this one's gone there and whatnot. So they don't even need to count because they know, literally, they know the sheep. They call the sheep come to them, and so on and so forth. So this is something which is very, very important, which is courage. Then we come to point number 4, which is concern and compassion. Sheep must be fed. They will not go and look for food on their own. If food is not provided, they will simply sit and die. Now, this is true also especially in the West, in the UK and in America and so on sheep farms, where in winter you have to go and put the feed there. And no matter how, I have friends of mine in Northumberland, on the border of Scotland, who have sheep, who have a farm and they have sheep. And I know these people, I mean, no matter how bad the weather is, and it can be miserable, it can be extremely wet and dark and very, really horrible weather. Despite that, these people, they go out and they make sure the sheep are all there. They take hay, they put all that hay there to make sure the sheep have food. Otherwise, they will just die. You go next morning and the sheep are gone. So it takes a lot of effort to be a shepherd of sheep. Then the shepherd must ensure that he takes them to the right grazing ground, or that he has an alternate source of food. So sometimes, in winter and so on, there is no grazing ground, so you put some bales of hay or something there, and also water. Amazing. The sheep have to be really nurtured and taken care of. Otherwise, they tend to, I told you, for the sheep to die is nothing. It just happens like that. Now, therefore, the shepherd has to think of the nutrition of his sheep before he thinks of his own. He can't be thinking of, his own food and doing his own cooking or whatnot, and then he leaves the sheep or to their own devices, and there is a lot of problem after that. So concern and compassion for the flock must be uppermost in the mind of the shepherd. When sheep get sick, it is the shepherd who must sit up in the night and nurse them. How many times have you seen, I've seen this many, many times, small sheep, kids, which is really the young of sheep, right? These are, the shepherd will sometimes carry one on his shoulders, right? One or two on his shoulders, like this, four legs, hind legs, because the thing is too tired to walk, right? The mother will just walk away. I mean, the mother of the kid, obviously she can't even lift him, so what's she going to do? But the shepherd will carry this little one to help them over difficulties and so on, carrying them across. Newborn kids, as well as maybe sometimes older, but because they're going a longer distance, so the kid tends to get tired, so the shepherd now has to carry this kid on its shoulders. Sometimes I ask people, how many kids do you have? So they tell me 3. So I said, this is the reason why there is no tarbiyah, because kids are the young of sheep and goats. Human beings have children. We need to raise children. So we are looking now at these qualities that the shepherd needs. Then number 5 is vision. A shepherd needs to have vision. Now, by vision, I don't mean, long-term career futures. I mean, a shepherd needs to be able to see beyond the immediate. Because sheep are close to the ground, and if you look at it, sheep always have their head also down. They're grazers, so their head is down, they're looking at the grass, they're eating the grass. And so they can't look far. First of all, they're not very tall, so they can't look far ahead. If you see, for example, the orientation of the head for a camel, for a horse, for a cow or a bull or a buffalo, and for sheep, there is a marked difference, huge difference. Camels have an extremely arrogant way of holding their head. Not only do they hold it up, they hold it like this, this way, right? This chin up kind of orientation of the head is a sign of internal arrogance of the human being. You will find this also in some people, right? If you see the photographs of people, you find some people, a lot of them politicians, for example, who talk like this, and so literally the term in English of looking down your nose comes from this, because if your head is up like this and people are down here, so you're looking down your nose at the people, which is a sign of arrogance. Now camels hold their heads like that. So do horses. Horse also head is up like this, very proud. Cattle, buffaloes, not to that extent, but still their head is up. But sheep, always head is down. They're looking down. They are not able to look further up to see any danger. Shepherd, of course, has a vantage point because the shepherd is obviously much taller, so he can become aware of any potential danger long before the sheep come to it, and he can warn them, or he can take action to guard them against that danger. So this vision is very important. In the case of the Anbiya alayhimus salam, the prophets foresee the results of deeds which the doers of the deeds don't see. This is like the hadith of Mirza Sallam. He said that if you knew what I know, then you would cry more and you would laugh less. He's talking about the akhirah, he's talking about the trials and tribulations of the day of judgment, of the khabar, and so on. So the Anbiya alayhimus salam come to warn us. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا بَشِيرًا وَنَذِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we have not sent you except as somebody to give glad tidings and to warn people. So who can warn? You don't need to warn somebody who already knows what the problem is. You warn some people who don't know. So you're telling them, look, if you continue like this is going to end in a bad situation. Right? Today in COVID times, you tell people, if you are not going to wear a mask, if you are not going to maintain distance, if you're not going to wash your hands, and so on and so forth, it is likely that you might get COVID and you might also give it to other people. So be careful. Now, when a shepherd is herding his flock, he is the only one who knows what direction to take, because the destination that he wants the sheep to reach. The sheep have no clue. The sheep will go wherever the shepherd wants them to go, including to the abattoir. I mean, in some cases, the shepherd is not the shepherd is the butcher in disguise. He looks like a shepherd, but he's actually the butcher. And this is what shaitan does, right? In a human being, for a human being, the shaitan tries to act like the shepherd. The shepherd is the Nabi and the butcher is the shaitan. But the shaitan comes to you pretending to be the shepherd, and then he says, come with me, let me guide you. Where does he guide you? He guides you to the abattoir for you to get slaughtered. So the sheep will go in any direction that the shepherd sets, even if it is harmful. When was the last time you saw sheep rebelling and not going to the abattoir, running away or ganging up on the shepherd and trying to attack him, because they realize that this man does not have our best interest at heart? So that's why it's very essential for the shepherd to be clear about the direction in the first place, and that's why vision is very critical. Without vision, the shepherd doesn't know where to go, and obviously he cannot guide the sheep. Point number 6, leadership quality number 6 that you learn from being a shepherd of sheep is simplicity. As I told you, shepherds live out in the bush. They live out on the grazing lands. So if you want a 5-star life, then it's not going to happen, because there's no one there. You are alone, and you have to, your house literally within quotes is you are carrying it. Right? So many shepherds, especially in India and so on, I've seen, they don't even have a tent. Right? They just live out in the open. The sky is their roof, and the grass is their bedding. They just have this kambal, this what is called a kambal, which is a blanket, a very thick sheepskin blanket, and it's pretty big. So they one part of it they lie down on, the other part they cover themselves with. Some people might have a mat. Usually it's made of grass, so a grass mat, which is they roll it up and they keep it under their arm or something. They carry it, but that's it. I mean, there is not even a hut, not even a tent, because first of all they're moving from place to place, so where is the time to build a hut? And secondly, anything you can have you can have a palace, but you have to carry the palace on your back. It's literally like that. So the more luggage you have, the more problematic it is. Compare this again to herdsmen of buffaloes, herdsmen of horses. There they have the scope for more luxury within quotes, right? Because the animal will carry it for them. So they will, whatever they want to have, they put them into saddlebags and they put their saddlebags on the horse or the back of the buffalo or something, and the animal quite happily carries it because the animal is big. So also they can ride the animal. Right, when I was young, we used to ride buffaloes into a lake, and then the buffaloes would swim and they'd wallow in the water, and we would jump off and swim. And when we wanted to get back, you just hold the buffalo's tail, and the buffalo swims and brings you to the shore quite happily, because the animal is a big, powerful animal. You can ride on the back; it makes no difference. But you can't ride on the back of a sheep. So the shepherd has to walk the whole time. He's carrying his stuff, so he has to be simple. And therefore shepherds learn to live. They learn austerity, and they learn to live without luxuries. Shepherds have to carry their own possessions, because sheep will not carry them. And so the shepherd has to be light and mobile. The shepherd also has to be physically tough, as I told you, and must take hardship in his stride. He sleeps early. He wakes often in the night to check on his flock, and then he wakes early as the day breaks and the flock begins to stir, because if he sleeps too long, the sheep will leave him and go away in all directions. And then, of course, obviously the shepherd will be in trouble, because he is the one who is responsible. So simplicity comes very easy. Second thing is, even food, for example. And what does a shepherd have to eat? At the most, many shepherds will milk some sheep and drink the milk. You can't, of course, kill the sheep and cook the sheep, because that's part of your, that's what you're taking care of. So even his food, he has very simple food. Many of them have food which is like dry food, and one time in the day, when they are settling in for the night, he'll light a fire, he'll cook himself some simple meal, and that's it. I mean, maybe next morning he just drinks some milk or something. So they eat less, they sleep early, they wake early, they live a life of simplicity. There is no luxury in it. They become physically tough and strong and alert. They don't sleep deep sort of sleep of the dead. Even their sleep is very alert, and so on. So these are all wonderful qualities to develop. Last and final one is closeness to nature. Right? Close to nature. Now, shepherds naturally live close to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in most places, as I told you, shepherds camp out with their sheep, moving from grazing to grazing, and sometimes they do not return home for weeks or months. Their only company is sheep, and you can talk to the sheep, but the sheep don't talk back to you. So you have to love solitude. This is another beautiful thing that you learn being a shepherd of sheep, is that there is no company there. There is no human company. Right? There is no human company. Even in today's day and age, I think some places where the shepherds graze sheep, there is not even any phone signal. So you can't even take your phone and say, you have to talk to my friends all day. No. And the shepherd we are talking about, we are not talking about people who had, Musa alayhi salam was not carrying a mobile phone. So and most of the shepherds who, even in today's world, they are poor people. Maybe there is a phone, but they really don't carry those phones and stuff. So they're becoming used to solitude, knowing how to keep yourself engaged, not going crazy with being alone. These are all qualities to be learnt. Beautiful time to make zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, beautiful time to pray, beautiful time to contemplate, beautiful time to write, beautiful time to reflect on the glory and magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because one of the beauties of camping out in the night is you get to see the night sky. And the places where shepherds graze sheep are usually far away from cities, so there's no ambient light, it's dark, and the sky comes alive, and you can see the stars. I mean, amazing, millions and millions and millions. I mean, there's no count to the number of stars that you can see in the sky, and all of this is the fringe benefit of being a shepherd of sheep. There's plenty of time. There's no to reflect. There's no urgency to go from place to place, and there is the opportunity to get to know yourself very well. If you are a thoughtful person, you are able to really get to know yourself very well. Among the joys of being close to nature, as I told you, one is to be able to see the stars in the night, and also to drink and eat natural things. Drink from, inshallah, you are in a place where you can safely drink from streams, and you eat simple food, and then you sleep on the ground. All of these are beautiful opportunities to connect with the earth and to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, the opportunity of what I call to hear the silence. To hear the silence. That's very, very important. It is something which is people who come from, especially from cities, they get so used to the noise. Especially in India, the cities are very, very noisy. Even anywhere else, I mean, even if you go to New York, for example, or Boston or something, and if you're walking on the street, there is a lot of sound, right? There's a direct sound, indirect sound, sound of cars, vehicles, maybe somebody's radio playing or something. So there is a lot. But when you go out with your sheep into the bush, there is no sound. It's absolute silence. And then your ears, for a while, they echo. There's a kind of buzzing in the ears, as if there is something in your head. But that is actually the hangover of the sounds of the city that you came from. But if you are patient with yourself, you'll find suddenly that all of that goes away and there is absolute silence. Then you start hearing the sounds of the place. You will hear cicadas, you will hear crickets, you will hear small birds, you will hear the rustle of your sheep or something, animals walking. You will literally hear, and all the things I'm telling you, I have heard. You literally hear a leaf drop from a tree. Right? In the summer, if you are in a deciduous forest, you can actually hear a leaf fall from a tree onto the carpet of dead and dry leaves that is on the ground. It's so beautiful. You hear these things. You also learn to recognize sounds. And you say, well, what is that call? Is it a call of a bird? Is it a call of a sound of something which is harmful potentially to me and my sheep? Or is it something which is good? Some calls, for example, some birds will call before it starts to rain. So when you hear those birds, they say, okay, now it looks like it's going to rain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this knowledge, so these birds will call before the rain. So we know that, let me make some protection for myself and my sheep and so on. So you hear sounds which are local, which are at that time, it is so beautiful, unbelievably beautiful time thing to experience. You also become comfortable with darkness and you do not feel threatened. Because all the time to have a fire, first of all, is not practical. Secondly, if you are sitting in front of a fire and looking into it, your night vision goes blank. And that is actually dangerous, because then when you turn, you are completely blind. You can't see anything. So you will use a fire for whatever you need it, like cook your food or something. But after you put it out and you sit in darkness, and this darkness is friendly, it is warm, it is enveloping, it is something which you are used to. You don't feel threatened by it. You are not afraid. And then in the morning you see the sun rise, right? You see the sun set in the evening, you see the sun rise in the morning, and believe me, subhanAllah, this is such a sign of Allah, and Allah mentioned this. Yeah, Allah said, you recognize signs of Allah in the alternation of the day and the night. So we recognize the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that, and then you have this opportunity to build your connection with the one to whom you will answer one day. And these are all the benefits of herding sheep. And even if you don't do that literally today, it's important to ask how many of these qualities are within us and what we can do to develop them. As I mentioned before, this is a very eminently useful thing to introduce in schools for children. Take them out camping, let them give them a set of sheep, 5 sheep, 10 sheep to each child, and say, go now look after the sheep. Come back after 2 days. Obviously, monitor them. Don't get them, children and the sheep, get lost together. But at the same time, do it in a way where they get to learn these lessons from the herding of sheep. These are so valuable that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made His Anbiya do this work. And Musa alayhi salam did that for 10 years. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did that throughout his childhood, well into his youth. You had Isa alayhi salam who did it, and so on and so forth, and many other of the Anbiya alayhi salam. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to learn always, continuously. As Seneca said, as long as you live, learn how to live. And that's very important for us to remember. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.